Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial, and today we've got another Watch It Wednesday, where if you haven't been following this series, we've been going through some footage that we found in our collections, probably from 1999, of we believe, Navy inspection team at the Bremerton, Washington Inactive Fleet Facility, going through Battleship New Jersey prior to her being towed and turned over to the state of New Jersey. So far, we've done what, three or four 15-minute sections, and we've seen a lot of the ship's superstructure. So I suspect in this episode, we're going to jump down to second deck and keep watching for another 15 minutes and talk about what we see. I honestly can't remember where we left off last week, but we'll get into that pretty quickly. Just a word of warning, this is a guy with a 1990s era camera handheld, so it is kind of shaky. There's a lot of panning and blurry stuff, and there's a lot of really weird cuts where they'll be looking in a room and then they'll cut to another room. It seems like going up the superstructure, they did not look in absolutely every possible room, but this is a fairly complete inventory, and so far it's been pretty cool to see what is intact and what isn't. Now, I came here after the museum had already been operating for some 16 or 17 years, and so it was interesting to me to see what the spaces were like more or less when the museum acquired the ship. So what equipment got gutted or moved around or has been reinstalled by the museum. So as we see instances of that while we're going through, I'll point them out. So let's get to it. All right, so we are clearly in one of the berthing spaces. This space is currently used as the tool issue room. We're heading towards the starboard side of the ship. Now we're looking forward at turret 2. This was the gunner's mate's library or something like that. We currently use it as a paint storage room for our volunteers. Now this space is full of a bunch of tools now, like hand tools, that some of which obviously the museum has bought, but a lot of them appear to be, I think that's a microfiche reader, that is still in that room. A lot of these tools appear to be from when the ship was in service. They've got stenciling or writing on them that seems to indicate they're from when the ship was in service. Interesting. Those manuals are not there anymore. I wonder if they've been taken to the manual room. There's a big safe in here. Notice it's wired shut. We have cans of paint in there now. Notice that this armored wiring trunk was open. For dehumidification, you could briefly see the manhole cover on the side. So I always assumed that the tool issue room, all of those tools were just in there, but it seems like we have put them in there at some point over the course of the ship's life. All right, so now we are one compartment forward, heading aft around turret 2 on the port side. There are a couple of smaller berthing compartments on the sides, like this one. Still heading aft on the port side around turret 2's barbette. Here's the other berthing compartment there. This would have been deck division guys who probably manned the forward 2 gun turrets staying in these spaces. Notice voids are open so dehumidification and ventilation can go all the way through the ship. If he pans down, we might be able to see some of the dehumidification desiccant packs, but it looks like he didn't pan down far enough. Alright, same side of the ship heading aft. This hatch leads down to some of the forward 16-inch magazines. Oh, there's some old World War II lockers that were retained when they swapped them out for the more modern 80s ones. That's interesting to me. See, the World War II ones are those like 3-foot cubed lockers mounted 3 high. That air handler unit's been completely gutted. We've put it back together and use it still. Here's one of the dehumidification machines and all of its hoses coming off of it. This is currently one of the offices where we store models. It's part of the collections spaces. Interesting, there's a ladder in there. I bet that ladder was removed to get the dehumidification machine in. This space was converted into the Admiral's staff space, and we use it as curatorial offices and collection spaces now. Interesting that none of the counters are in place. Most of those have been returned. I have not seen where they are stored in this, but you can see the mounting brackets on the wall. Surprising to see just how empty these spaces are. There's a large, like, wardroom style table in there now. And so notice the welding machine is there. That door that we're looking at here, that this man is standing in front of, is my office currently. So it's interesting to see that welding machine has just been there. It's not something that was picked up. Yeah, so this is what my office looked like back in the day. The space is currently the education office. This is the former warrant officer's head that's right there between those two offices, my office and the education office. It is not a working head anymore. We have not returned this one to functional. We try to limit where we've got water running on the ship, but that makes it really inconvenient when I need to use the bathroom. I'm not saying I leave a bucket under my desk or anything, but I'm not denying that I do that. So we're heading aft on the port side. This space is one of the warrant officer staterooms that has stayed in its original configuration. It's one of the few that doesn't seem to be converted into an office.
Where you are right now.
Here's one that has been converted into an office. Notice the bed's been removed and it's got more shelves than normal, but it retains the sink and the mirror and that sort of stuff. So we're back in that education office. I'm not sure why they jump around the way that they do. Oh, interesting. The safe has been knocked over, probably intentionally, so it doesn't fall over while the ship is moving. There's a couple places where you can see what looks like sand on the deck. I suspect hydraulic fluid has leaked out of some of the overhead plumbing, and so they just covered it with a sand or a kitty litter or something like that. Here's another former stateroom where you can see the remnants of the bed that was removed. It got converted into an office. Some of the offices have custom-made desks like this one. Other ones, it seems like the desks that were movable have been stripped out for use on other ships, maybe. You can see that there is equipment missing at that base plate on the deck. And there's another one. So clearly the ship was opened up for stripping. This room is completely empty. You can see the paint on the bulkhead where there was something mounted there. It's the old World War II type bullseye, and there's the modern type bullseye. This is the retail manager's office nowadays. Most of these were Master at Arms or the ship's legal counsel offices back when the ship was in service. I don't remember what that one was specifically. Oh, we fixed that door since this was taken. This space is currently our oral history office. If you haven't watched any of the oral histories on our YouTube channel, we've got a couple hundred of them posted. Every time a former veteran comes back, we try to get them to sit down for an oral history. It's pleasing to see that the condition of the void spaces hasn't really changed much. The interior of the ship, the paint is in pretty good condition, but those void spaces, you do see some running rust and some rust bloom. And that's still pretty much what you see today. Notice not all the lights are on. This is our current day recording studio. When the ship was in service, this was the computer literacy training classroom. Computers were such a brand new frickin' thing. And people were joining the Air Force for technical skills. So the Navy was like, okay, if you join us, we'll teach you how to use computers before we release you back into the wild. So obviously all that's been removed. Now we're looking athwartships past the post office. This door to the left is the officer's galley. Okay, interesting. One of the dental chairs has been put in this room, which is the electrician's shop. We still use it as such. The dental offices are on the other side of the ship, so I'm not sure who moved that chair from there. I was never sure if those chairs were taken off of a strip trip or not. So it seems like they came with the ship. So now we are going into the officer's galley. It's interesting to see that refrigerator there in the bottom left is still there. It's an empty rack now, so I'm guessing it got moved to a different part of the ship. I'm really interested in seeing if there are yellow stickers on the equipment that say activated or inactivated. And there does not seem to be, which means those stickers are museum era, which makes no sense because as far as I know, we never activated any of the equipment in here. And yet some of the ovens and refrigerators in this officer's galley, which we've always just used as a storeroom, are listed as inactive or active. Wow, this footage reminds me of some of our earlier videos. Not quite sure what we're looking at. There's part of a dredger hoist coming through. I don't recognize this room at all. Okay, we're obviously in a berthing space now. Oh, I bet that last room was the paymaster's office. Our Sea Cadet troop is in there now, so I don't go in there very often. I'm betting that's why I didn't recognize it. But that's in roughly the same part of the ship. This berthing compartment, if it's the one I'm thinking of, was completely gutted by the museum to turn into a conference room. Notice the shoring timbers are left in place. This is the post office, which is on the tour route. You can see all the restoration work we've done in there. All right, so it looks like we saw a section of the ship from about turret 2 on second deck, going aft along the port side through a couple of offices until we got to the post office, roughly amidships on second deck. So be sure to stay tuned for future videos. We'll keep going through this footage to see the rest of the ship. And if you're interested in this sort of video, you haven't gotten too seasick along with me, there's a link in the description to the playlist that has the other episodes of this. Tune in every Watch It Wednesday. We think we've got about 3 hours of this footage, so it'll probably take us 10 or 12 weeks or so to get through all of it. And so during that time, every Wednesday, we'll put out a new video like this. What spaces are you most interested in seeing? Let us know in the comment section down below. It was really interesting for me to see my office and how it hasn't really changed too much since the last curators and myself have been in there. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, and also from a number of other businesses and private individuals. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description if you'd like to continue supporting us monetarily. You can also support the museum by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about us and our channel. Thanks for watching.